This episode of the Linux Action Show is brought to you by DigitalOcean and by Ting. Go to last.ting.com and save $25 off your first device or your first month of service. Welcome to Linux Action Show, episode 346. My name is Chris.
My name is Matt.
Hey, Matt. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Are you ready for me to tell folks about the big show?
Let's do it.
Well, Greg KH, a longtime Linux developer, he's currently the Linux maintainer of the stable branch, which is something we all use, as I learned in the interview. And, of course, also many critical subsystems and some classic systems that you've relied on for many years. He's got a great perspective on Linux, and he joins us in the second half of the show. And then, of course, we've got news and our picks. So it is a big show today.
Huge.
And we have some great stuff to follow up on in the feedback segment of the show. So it's a big show. And, Matt, we got to start with our Runs Linux
Let's
picks.
do it.
And we got a couple in this week. I decided,
we're going to go for a couple? Okay.
I decided double Runs Linux, Matt. So Dejan from Sweden writes, and he says, during a recent trip to Rome, I came upon a help desk terminal kind of thing. It was a pedestal with a touchscreen for information and a microphone and camera so you could make video calls with support personnel. Whoa. It was awesome, and it helped out since my Italian is non-existent. An Italian organization skill leaves a lot to be desired. The next one I saw, however, seems to have had a problem, and it showed only a GNOME desktop with a very Ubuntu-esque background, but I couldn't quite place it. So he took some pictures, Matt, so let's try to place it. You recognize immediately the background.
Oh yeah,
colors.
that's definitely Ubuntu. That's crazy.
And you see you see right there the activities menu.
Oh wow!
Right?
And
it's definitely
that's
GNOME 3.
Good image.
Yeah, so it appears to be, and if you get it right here, you can see a shot of the camera, and then there's a working version of it where everything's working full screen right there with the full touchscreen terminal. It actually looks like a really, really nice system.
It looks very tight.
Yeah, this just goes to show you, one of the reasons why we do this Runs Linux, and with Greg coming on the show today, this is what it's all about. Linux is everywhere now. And even in just touchscreen terminals to get information, they're powered by Linux, in this case, Ubuntu.
And it makes sense. It's stable. It works.
Speaking of Linux being anywhere, from Rome to, well, really in the wild, this one came in from Kerbin47. This is our double Runs Linux pick. This urinal runs Linux.
Oh man, I could go so many directions.
Yeah. So there you go.
Compiling your kernel, you say?
Here's a close-up look, and he comes in close on the screen here. You can see it's Ubuntu.
Awesome.
Again, it's Ubuntu. This one's based on Linux kernel 3.2.0, generic with PAE support, so that's good. Here's the story from Kerbin. He says, I went with a few friends to Boston Pizza. It's a pizza chain in Toronto. And after I had a few beers, I went to the washroom. That's what we call it up here in the north. And to my surprise, I saw this on the screen. With my pants already unbuttoned, I pulled out my phone and took some pictures. Apparently, he was in the middle of doing the business. Anyways, I was very excited to see this grub menu in the wild, even when it was on the same wall with the urinal.
That's wild. And when I'm in the bathroom taking care of business, I definitely want to make sure that I'm running a 64-bit situation. I mean, none of this 32-bit nonsense.
Right. Yeah.
32-bit, 64-bit urinal, man. That's
if you're gonna have to go, they should boot right there in the 60s. So this is probably I don't know how we're ever gonna top this. This is kind of peak.
That's cool.
And I think what I love is the idea that he's just sitting there taking a leak and he's blasting off a few shots.
Yeah, I was gonna say that could be an interesting conversation starter.
Right? Yeah, I guess it would take a few beers first. So that's all. We had to have a special double Runs Linux this week because those are pretty unique circumstances, and I think they really underscore and demonstrate the diversity. We all, of course, know Linux is used on desktops and servers and embedded devices. Your Android device,
right. But I mean, they're everywhere. And pro tip, man rule, if you're in the bathroom and you have a camera, don't do it with someone next to you. It's kind of like an elevator.
Definitely give them some man space.
And don't be,
that's
taking
always
pictures.
Good advice.
It's weird.
Always good advice. You know what else is good advice? DigitalOcean. Head over to DigitalOcean.com and check this out. We've got a special promo code that's like retro. It's like 2014 retro. So if you use it now, you are way ahead of the curve because you're so far ahead of the curve, you're turning around that curve because our promo code, if you're following me, is last December. Last December over at DigitalOcean.com. Go check out DigitalOcean, sponsor of the Linux Action Show. They're a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way for you to spin up your own cloud server that you're going to have root access to. And you can get started in less than a minute, about 55 seconds or less. I got an email the other day, 36 seconds. Pricing plans start at only $5 a month. For that $5, you're going to get 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, one CPU, and a frickin' terabyte of transfer. And DigitalOcean has data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, and a beautiful. And they're all beautiful. But that London one, I've seen pictures. It's just incredible. But you know what else is incredible is their interface. The way you manage all of this. Everything about DigitalOcean is running on top of Linux boxes. Powered by KVM, the best virtualizer, in my opinion, for this kind of job. All out there utilizing the latest technologies, the latest Linux releases, partnering with the CoreOS project, integrating Docker and one-push application installations using really modern Linux technologies. And they do all of this with this amazing dashboard. It's simple and intuitive, and power users can replicate the dashboard on a larger scale with DigitalOcean's straightforward API. You can really get up and going in no time. You can take snapshots, deploy applications, manage your DNS. You even get root access at the console. Blue Phoenix in the chat room and on the subreddit sent in a message. He says, DigitalOcean's helping bring the family together. So my wife and I like to play Minecraft. Oh, that's nice. Not only that, but we like playing with lots of tech mods. Cool.
I like
JB
that.
has a fun Minecraft server, and we've played on it for a while, but it's a vanilla Minecraft, and it does tend to get boring after a while for us. So I wanted to run my own server. Well, DigitalOcean comes to the rescue. Their droplet option for my 2 gigabytes of RAM and 2 core and Ubuntu image is just perfect for the two of us. We've been playing on it for a week, and it hasn't had any issues at all.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And then Bobby S. Enterprises says, DigitalOcean helps me and the family come together in a different way. I have a Ghost blog along with OwnCloud to share pics, videos, and stories. We also use BitTorrent Sync to keep things in sync between family members. He says, I'm not doing Minecraft yet, but I'm thinking about doing it. It's addicting from what I've seen.
Sounds like another droplet on the way.
The value is incredible. When you use the promo code last December, you're going to get a $10 credit. That $10 credit lets you try out the $5 rig for 2 months for absolutely free. That's a great deal, and it's a retro promo code. DigitalOcean.com. Use the promo code last December like it's 2014, and then get ready to rock 2015 with your killer droplet. DigitalOcean.com, and a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. You guys rock.
Cool.
Matt, I'm writing out these these USB thumbsticks all the time for distros. Yep. Even though I got that Zalman drive, the fact that the killer for the Zalman drive is it can show up as an external USB CD-ROM, which is great. So I put an SSD in there because I had an extra one that I pulled out of a rig, like 128 gigabyte old SSD. So and it mounts as a USB 3 CD-ROM. It's awesome because it just reads the ISO images. The downside is it requires NTFS. So I've gone back to writing USB thumbsticks, and sometimes I need to write a few thumbsticks because I'm trying multiple different rigs. I'm testing the distro on several pieces of hardware, and it's always been the same approach. I download the ISO image, I bring up the terminal, I CD into my downloads directory, I DD that ISO image to the USB thumb drive, I wait the random amount of time DD seems to take, and then I go install. And it works. It's fine.
And it's usually not too long, but it does vary.
And DD's great, and we've even shown some DD alternatives. New tool came out I believe it was Friday. I saw it on Google+, and it's already up. It's in the up on GitHub, and of course, because it was developed on Friday and today is Sunday, that obviously means it's in the AUR now too. So
of course,
right?
Of course.
So if you're on Arch, you can get it already. So it's called Gnome Multi-Writer, and it can be used to write multiple USB drives at once from a single ISO file.
Whoa!
So here's a screenshot of it. This is depending on your theme, going to look a little different. But you select the ISO image. It'll automatically display all of your attached USB devices, and then it can write that ISO image to all of the attached devices at once. So one image gets blasted out to all of the USB thumbsticks in one go.
I like that. Now, use case scenario, small office. You want the same distro on a bunch of computers. Boom! There you go.
Yeah,
I'm just saying you can pop them onto flash drives and be like, look, I'm not going to install this for you. Linux is easy enough. You can figure it out. There you go.
It's also good for me for testing if I'm going to be testing all across multiple hardwares. If you're a developer and you have the same kind of setup, or if you're doing some hardware testing, it's really handy. In fact, it's got kind of a limited use case, but I bet there's a few out in our audience that when they have this kind of tool, they're really going to love it. It's brand new too, so.
I think as a concept, it's just cool because it has a real interesting practical use to it.
Yeah, and you could also figure out ways you could probably use it for I don't know, perhaps backups and things like that too.
Oh,
so
no kidding, right?
I believe it was on Richard's C+ profile where I'm talking about it, but you can check it out and help him too. It's up on GitHub, and it's looking really cool. And I like the project name. I think GNOME Multi-Writer is a good one. Yes. And when I was installing it on an Archbox, it wanted a development version of libUSB, so beware of that.
Okay.
And I also linked to the blog post where he talks about it, and he gives you little progress bars.
That's nice.
Isn't that neat?
Especially when you're doing if you're doing 2 or 3 at once. Obviously, your computer system and the power going to your computer system are a consideration when you're doing more than 2. But definitely check it out.
Yeah, have it plugged in for sure.
Yeah.
But really cool way to try out different stuff. And so Richard, who's great work on the project, and caught that on G+ right when I was doing the show research, and I thought, this is so neat, I got to talk about it. And it wasn't in the AUR at the time, and then a few hours later.
I love that. A few hours later. Boom, there it is.
And I actually did manage to get it installed. I just had to use a dev version of it.
Well, and the dev thing, honestly, it's like, look, you back up your old one, you know.
Yeah, you could always
whatever.
revert back.
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
So something that seems to really taken off in the Jupyter broadcasting community, but just on the internet in whole, is more and more people are just kind of giving up and saying, all right, I'm going to use Markdown. You know, you've heard of Markdown. You're like, what is Markdown? Why do I want to use Markdown? And then eventually everybody gets to the point, fine, I'm going to use Markdown. In fact, our Open Your Mouth recipe site, all of the recipes are written in Markdown. A bunch of awesome recipes all written in Markdown. I always talk about different apps that are GTK-based. I'm never giving love to you Qt users and KDE Plasma desktop users out there. So MUP, a Markdown previewer editor, is a really nice Markdown previewer with real-time preview, so you can edit, type, and it'll give you real-time updates for the KDE Plasma desktop. It supports multiple markup formats. It's very easy to extend. There's a simple plug-in system. It automatically refreshes itself when the document is modified, so you can just keep it up. You can use your favorite text editor to write the Markdown. You keep this up in another window. You get to see your changes. This is actually one of my preferred ways to do it if I'm not using Heroku, or HaruPad, I mean. It supports gzip documents too, which is nice to read, like the documentation that comes in like your packages. It supports Markdown and restructured text. You can use Python modules. It supports all the regular Markdowns like GitHub flavored Markdown, Common Mark, Gruber Original, and Pandoc. So yeah,
that's really cool. I like that.
It used to be, the project used to be known as MD View. But it's been given new life and a new name. And for those of you on the KDE variety of desktops, I featured my favorite, which is HaruPad. But it's really difficult to get on a lot of mainly Fedora and OpenSUSE. Yeah. But it's hard to get. And this is looking very promising for those of you out there.
What a great option. And what a great excuse to get that second monitor you've had your eyes on, guys. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right.
So
boom, boom.
Producer Michael, or a.k.a. Rotten Corpse, has created something really useful for the listeners out there. If you've heard us have an app pick or a distro pick or a spotlight or something like that in the past, and you've wondered, where the hell is that? How can I find it? Do I have to go listen to every episode? He's begun working on a site that you can find at jupiterbroadcasting.com/laspicks, L-A-S picks with an S. And it is a dashboard where you can go in there and look at all the various picks we've had in the show in the past. Again, that's jupiterbroadcasting.com/laspicks. So like, for example, we take desktop apps. It'll now expand out a list of all the desktop apps. You can see we could go back. Last week included a pick. This week included this pick. This week included this pick. It gives you the date and a link to the episode where you can find it. So and of course it does it for desktops, for the projects we've spotlighted, even the old Android app picks that we used to do. Now this needs the most contribution, but it's getting filled out right now. So you can find distros. And on the site there's information about how you can get involved, and we'll cover a little bit more in Linux Unplugged on Tuesday. We'll talk to Rotten Corpse about it. Here's the Runs Linux picks. Here's all the previous Runs Linux picks.
That is cool. And how many times do we get that question? What a great resource.
Yeah. So it's jupiterbroadcasting.com/lastpicks, and you can find, seriously, something you might want to consider is when you're setting up a new system, either an Android device or a Linux desktop, really, you could go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/lastpicks and just peruse through the desktop picks and, choose which ones you want to load on the new rig. This, I believe, I put a lot of work into these desktop picks, so I really stand by a lot of these picks, even, years later in some cases.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's a great list of applications. And something like, here's MPV, here's HaruPad, I just mentioned that, right? Shutter, Braid, Slap. QNFF is a great MKV Toolnix was something somebody was just asking about in the subreddit the other day. Menu Libre is a great menu editor that I actually went and looked up recently. So it's jupiterbroadcasting.com/lastpicks. You can go over there and you can either contribute or, because there is gaps and we do need help because it's all a big list.
But it's a great starting point.
Yeah, there's already a lot there. So, and I'll have it linked in the show notes as well. So if you can't remember jupiterbroadcasting.com/lastpicks, you can click a link in the show notes. Easy enough.
Good stuff.
All right, Matt, let's do the news.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com, Matt. Ting is mobile that makes sense. Ting is a mobile service provider, and Matt's mobile service provider, as well as a lot of people in the Jupiter Broadcasting audience. In fact, the Jupiter Broadcasting crew uses Ting. It's really a great service, and it's because it's a little different than everybody else. You only pay for what you use with Ting. Grok that for a second. You only pay for what you use. They start with a flat $6 for your phone line.
Super reasonable. That's couch money, guys.
And you can even turn it off if you need to. Like if you want to deactivate it for a little bit, That's easy, right? So you start with the flat $6 for the phone line, and then it's just your usage on top of that, just your minutes, your messages, and your megabytes. It's all broken out on the Ting website. Go to last.ting.com. That'll support our show. And it'll also get you a $25 discount off your first Ting device. If you've got a Ting-compatible device, well, they'll give you a $25 credit. Plus, they have an early termination relief program to help you get out of a contract. And then you'll be contract-free. I love my Nexus 5 on Ting. I run a bunch of different operating systems on it. And when Ting goes GSM in February, I'll be ready. I can do CDMA and GSM. Just got to get the SIM card from Ting when they're ready to go. That's really exciting. That means I'm going to get additional value out of this phone today. You can take advantage of Ting's early termination relief program. You can get out of your contract. You can start paying for what you use. You get Wi-Fi, hotspot, tethering, voicemail, all that stuff. You can get it right now today. And then when Ting's ready to go GSM, if you did something like the Nexus 5, you just pop it in and you're good to go. You're ready. And one of the things that I love about Ting, and I think you could take advantage of today without the GSM, is their dashboard. This is something that a lot of sponsors that we have are really focused on, because I'm kind of a design sucker, and if somebody builds something really well, I get pretty passionate about it. And that's one of the things I love about the Ting dashboard, is it's created in a way that's very straightforward. It allows me to get direct access to what I need. I get in, I get out, and it's everything from like literally buying a phone, activating that phone, moving a phone over to Ting. When I became a Ting customer, I had a Sprint Evo 4G, and I just went to the Ting dashboard and I moved my phone over without ever calling a human being. So not only is their website totally capable and web compliant standards, it's really nice. It works well on mobile, it works well on your browser, but on top of that, they have no hold customer service. You can call Ting at 1-855-TING-FTW anytime between 8 a.m. or 8 p.m., and a real human being will answer the phone and solve your problem. You get detailed billing from them. You can get detailed billing from their dashboard. It's all really well done. Plus, they have companion apps for your Android or your iOS device, so you can just check what your usage is at. If you've got a device that you don't use a lot, you can actually just disable it in the Ting dashboard, and they will recommend that. It's a great way to save money, and that's something a lot of folks will do with things like these Netgears. You can get the Netgear Zing. It's got an OLED screen. It gives you like your signal, your battery life, how much data you've used right on the Wi-Fi hotspot. So you can get real-time reports right on the Wi-Fi hotspot. You can manage your Wi-Fi settings. It's a tri-band LTE device. It's a hotspot in your pocket. $139 when you go to last.ting.com. $139 for a tri-band LTE hotspot in your pocket with an OLED screen that gives you your Wi-Fi hotspot password, your signal status, your data usage. $139, last.ting.com, no contract. So it's flat $6 for tri-band LTE in your pocket, and if you're not going to use it for several months, you just go disable it in the Ting dashboard, because they give you that ability. And when you go somewhere, you turn it on and you've got it, and you just pay for your usage. So if it sits in your drawer for 1 month, it's not a big deal, and then when you go out and use it, you're ready to go. You're not going to get an overage. That's just one example. You could get they have great phones, feature phones, smartphones, all of them. Last.ting.com. I recommend the Netgear Zing, though. I think it's one of the best LTE hotspots out there. And it gives you all that information right there on the device, which makes it really easy to get going.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sitting there thinking, if you're in a hotel room and you're thinking, okay, so I can either pay for hotel Wi-Fi or use the potentially free, crappy Wi-Fi they offer, or you bust out your Zing and you can actually get proper internet with proper speeds and have a good experience.
Well, I would use this kind of stuff for back in the day, like if I was doing support and I was on the hook. And, like somebody goes down, I would pull over, I'd go at a parking spot, and I would just get on the access point and remote in.
Yep, that's it. That's exactly it. Or another instance I can think of, there was a time when I was doing repairs and their internet's not really the best.
Oh, yeah.
And you're thinking, I really would like to just be able to connect to this and do what I need to do.
So, Frontier, our ISP, our FiOS, our fiber internet ISP, I have Ethernet from the FiOS box running up to my pfSense firewall at home. And one day, a Frontier rep just remotely switched my service from Ethernet back to coax.
That's what happened to you. Okay.
Yeah, and I didn't have internet for like 2 days. I didn't have internet for 2 days.
Why would they remotely do that? That's so dumb.
And this was just last week.
Wow.
And so the fact that I could just go turn on the Wi-Fi hotspot and not worry about doing overages, it takes a whole level of stress out. And I was thinking about, I'm just going to get a Zing.
Well, and think what it does for a family. You got family that are, they're watching Netflix,
we get
doing
crazy.
Whatever.
Yeah,
we get
it's
crazy.
Just
like,
Yeah, my 5-year-old's like, Dad, I can't get on YouTube. My 5-year-old, man. All right, so it is the holiday week, and so we got a good picking of news to pick from. Nothing major is happening, but some interesting developments. We've been talking a lot about Fedora 21, and Linus Torvalds posted on Google+. I thought maybe the best review of Fedora 21 I've read all release. So he says, now with the merge window open, he had time to upgrade to Fedora 21. He says it wasn't the smoothest, but when he realized you could do group updates to Fedora Workstation, he got it going. He had some post-upgrade woes, though. He says he had some GNOME extensions break on him. but he doesn't use a lot, and he was able to go to the GNOME Extensions website and update them. But he does give GNOME a hard time for having this issue over and over again.
Thank you.
I know. As a GNOME user, I agree.
With him.
He says the lock screen extension is highly recommended. He says he likes the lock screen icon. He says yes, he knows about Command L or Control L. Remember, he's on the Mac.
Yeah.
But he prefers just having the icon. And also, he says the new terminal seems to be defaulted to a new emo mode, aka dark theme. I don't know who thought it was a good idea to make a terminal application have its own depressed theme, different from all the other applications, but I'm guessing they spend their days cutting themselves and listening to death metal and thinking they're cool.
Wow. First of all, two different directions on the latter part there. But yes, I totally get what he's saying. I agree.
Yeah. I actually have a dark terminal right now. I changed it just in honor of Linus for the show today, just to make sure that, I kind of agree with Linus. It's a little hard to read.
It is hard to read. Well, I always do a dark terminal, then I transparent it with a nice background.
Ooh, Matt, you fancy.
I like to,
So, as all things Linus do, even this managed to create a dust up. Of course, then later, there's now a 144 long comment thread.
All these death metal fans are like, what are you talking about?
I think emo mode's great. And then, of course, on the Linux subreddit, it got heated. Well, what? You want to stare at a white terminal? Are you insane, Linus? Do you want to burn your retinas?
He's the man behind the terminal. If he wants to do it on freaking toilet paper with a ink pen, that's his business. It's his terminal. I'm just saying.
No, Q5Sys in the chat room says I need more of a Comic Sans font. That is the Open Dyslexic font, which I switched to a couple of weeks ago. It is just like a trial for the show. It is a little weird to read. I will grant you that in the terminal. It does look a little
in the terminal. It's a little funky.
Yeah,
absolutely. And as far as Comic Sans are concerned, I like it because it irritates people. That's important to me.
So on the pre-show, you and I were talking about email and pop mail and setting up filtering systems and all of this. And email just sucks, right? It is a mess, and it seems to be pretty set in stone. Well, there's a company out there that I respect quite a bit. I've never been a customer, but I followed them forever. They're called Fastmail. Fastmail is considered to be one of the best out there in the email business. And they've recently open sourced sort of a front end to IMAP. It works with your existing IMAP installation, but it sort of exposes a set of APIs that a developer could use to make an amazing client based around IMAP. It's called JMAP, and they've made a video, so I'm going to play a little bit of it to kind of because they can probably explain it better than we can, Matt. So we'll play this from JMAP.
Developers of third-party email apps have a choice. They can either build something great, or they can build something that works with everyone. We want to make it possible to do both. IMAP is simply outdated. Even a modern client loading the same mailbox over IMAP is much slower and uses more data than Fastmail's app with our own API.
There's no open standard for push updates to an entire account, only vendor-specific APIs. These days we expect immediate updates on all our devices, computer, tablet, phone, and even watch, both when messages arrive and also when we action them.
JMAP is our solution. It's a modern, efficient, easy-to-use API based on the battle-tested protocol that powers Fastmail. It's completely open and free, and we're joining with other major vendors to forge a standard for the future. Let's work together to make everyone's email better.
So JMAP, and you can find it at jmap.io. It's an open source way to make email better. And here at Jupiter Broadcasting, we use Google Apps for our email, and so it kind of burns me a little bit because I'd really rather run it on a local system.
That would be nice. Yeah.
But the things they talk about, like the things that Google Mail is now starting to do, just kind of cover up some of the ugliness of IMAP, and it kind of all hits you in the face when you hook Thunderbird up to a Google Apps or Google Mail account.
It's ugly.
Yeah. So I'm curious about JMAP, and
well, it sounds like a pretty convincing argument, especially if you come from, I work for a company that, I use IMAP mail, and it's painful. It sucks.
Yes.
And so that would be a nice way to do it.
Yes. Yeah, I get excited whenever I see a really good, solid open source solution to solve a pain point because it's obviously something that needs addressed. It kind of brings a standard and solves a problem that a lot of developers have. The code's open. It's ready to be forked on GitHub. I dug around. I actually had a hard time finding the license specifically. I think it's more because it's a spec and a set of APIs.
Right.
They don't have a specific license, but it's encouraging magazine to see. And if you're curious about it, you can find out more. They already essentially have a version ready to go. It doesn't replace your existing mail server. This is what's really cool. It works with your existing mail server. It just sits in front of it. It handles a lot of the stuff for the end user, and then it talks IMAP on the back end to like your Courier IMAP server or whatever you got right now. So it's kind of a neat stepping stone to provide a better type of email and push and synchronization services to your end users for free.
So it's almost like an express lane for the freeway. I mean, it's
an express lane for electronic mail.
Yeah.
Electronic mail, email.
Freeway, but whatever. Same difference. I mean, like I said, you're already on the freeway, you're getting your mail, and sure.
All right, so finally we have a little make good. We got to make a correction. Something that just, in my opinion, has taken way too long. When the Gnome Software Store was announced, or whatever you want to call it, just software or whatever you want to call it, Gnome App Store, I was really disappointed that nobody got super butthurt and that there was no big controversy and drama, because that's just not how we roll. And so thankfully, Phoronix is highlighting the butthurt that is now occurring around the Gnome Software Center. You shouldn't be too surprised. There's been several different controversies around this app store. Should it include command line packages?
Oh.
This started in December. It's continued into January. It's not a big deal. But I do find it interesting because it's things I've wondered when I was using the software store myself.
Sure.
It's happening a lot of discussion in the Fedora development threads. They're questioning some of the motives behind the Gnome software. In particular, right now, the Gnome software application doesn't like command line only packages for installation. It won't really present those to the users. Also, some non-Gnome software isn't very often featured. And the reason is because Gnome developers don't often consider command line applications to be quote unquote standard applications. They're console applications, so they don't need to get featured.
Not only that, but also you got to think about, it's like, okay, so you're going to present this in a screenshot. Okay, yeah, I guess you kind of could. And then as far as the Qt apps, that might go into this situation. It's a cutie.
That's how I like it. That's how I like cute.
But whatever.
You're right. There's not a lot, and like the special exceptions for Qt applications and. These, to me, the reason why I want to talk about it is because to me it looks like, okay, good. We have a little growing pains. We have some discussion happening here. To me, I was blown away. I just recently fired up one of my oldest Fedora 21 installations. Yes, there is such a thing. I had an older one and went into the Gnome software area, and I was having a problem where Cheese would crash on me every time I would hit about 2 seconds after launching. Jesus. And Dylan wanted to make a video.
Right, and Cheese is like, if there was ever a buggy piece of software, that has got to be,
It's Cheese. So it's, as soon as the webcam video starts up, it crashes. And I'm like, oh, what the heck? So I opened up Gnome software, and I went to the updates. I applied all. Fedora rebooted, installed all the updates, and came back, and then Cheese worked fine. And it was just click, click. It was all integrated through the Gnome Software Center. So I think they're on to something. I think it's going in the right direction. And should we feature command line applications? Should they feature Qt applications? I think the answer is yes, as long as it's maybe presented correctly to the end user.
I think that, in fact, that this is even an argument is beyond stupid. Because if you think about it, it's like, okay, look, no one, you and I, we're not using these things to install software. Let's be honest, okay? We're power users. It's probably all done from the command line anyway. So, let's all get over that.
That's
that aside,
That's a good point.
This is for mom and pop kettle. I mean, they're literally.
Yeah, that's true.
It's software discovery.
It's about discovery, yes.
Because I can't tell you the last time I've used a terminal to discover software yet.
There was a period in time where I would find new apps through the Ubuntu Software Center.
Exactly, yeah, and that's just it, and even sometimes I still do. It's rare, but occasionally I do.
No.
So I'm just saying, it's like gosh.
But in Fedora 21, I was super impressed with the GNOME software because I went in there and in one click I had the entire Ardor audio workstation with all the jack dependencies and everything just ready to go. And I was editing Ardor within like 10 minutes.
That's right.
So there is serious potential here, and what I love about it is it rides on top of PackageKit, so it's distro agnostic too. So there's a lot of potential.
Yeah, there absolutely is. And I'll tell you, when it comes to discovering software, screenshots matter.
They do.
Because you want to know if it's going to look or do what you want it to do.
Why not have like an advanced mode? Like just like show advanced packages, and then boom, all the command line
I would
packages
love the option to actually have video included too. That would be nice. Because then you can actually see the flow.
Yes.
Just saying.
Yeah, screen caps would be very nice. And it could just be a WebM video that it just plays, because it's all HTML too.
But right? But all the graybeards are
No, I
Whatever.
think video will happen. I do.
Whatever.
All right, Matt. Like I said, it's a light week, but some interesting thing going on nonetheless. So, and of course, you can always contribute to our news segment by going to linuxactionshow.reddit.com.
Yeesh.
Our subreddit goes all day, every day, more content than we could ever fit into 2 podcasts.
Oh my gosh.
And it's a great way to get your stories or stories you find interesting into the show, and then the community votes on them. linuxactionshow.reddit.com. But Matt,
Yes.
that's all the news for this week. I'm really excited to welcome Greg KH to the show. He's about to join us now. If you're not familiar with Greg, he is a long-time Linux kernel developer. He's the kernel maintainer of the stable branch right now. Also, many critical subsystems you probably rely on every single day, simple things like USB. He's also been a long-time developer. He worked at SUSE. He's now working for the Linux Foundation. He also was the creator of UDev. Wow. How about that?
Oh, that's kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah, and also Linux Hot Plug, which I think we've probably used some of these systems before.
Oh my gosh, yes.
It's probably going to be a pretty good chat, I would say. Before we bring Greg on, I want to thank our segment sponsor, System 76. System 76, creators of machines born to run Linux. This way, you can have a trouble-free experience, and you have a system that's supported for the lifetime of the Ubuntu installation. How do they? That's amazing. That's because they're
really
advocates.
dedicated.
They're advocates. That's another great reason to go over to System 76 to get yourself a rig that's been designed around Linux. That way it's ready to go. They've got desktops built right here in the US of A. And of course, when you send your rig in, if it ever needs any work, you send it right to their offices there in Colorado and they work on it for you. And something we don't often mention, they also provide all of the same services that we've mentioned to servers. System 76 has some great servers. Head over to system76.com. Tell them the Linux Action Show sent you. Stop fighting with the hardware and get to play with your Linux. So we brought Greg on, and I started asking him, how did he get started with computers?
Oh, that was a long, long time ago. I was a little kid, and my father bought a TRS-80 Model 3 and brought it home and didn't know what to do with it. So
That's awesome.
I learned BASIC from it and magazines reading and took it and went from there. And that was, wow. That was a long time. My friends said they never saw me that summer. I think it was between 6th and 7th grade.
Well, Greg, I pronounced your last name Kroah-Hartman. I've always known you as Greg KH. Did I get the pronunciation close?
Close. The first part is crow, like the bird. Kroah-Hartman.
So I have a little confession to make before we get in the rest of the show because I feel kind of dumb about this. For some reason, I always pictured you potentially in Germany or somewhere else. Turns out you're kind of in our backyard. You're in the Seattle area. How much does the typical Seattle weather give you as an advantage as a developer? Be honest.
Well, I never want to go outside, right? It's all
Exactly.
Well,
I've lived in Seattle for 5 years. I've lived in Portland before that for 10 years. So I've done actually all my Linux work in the Pacific Northwest.
I'll be honest, I thought you were in Germany for a long time.
I worked for SUSE, and I had a German email address. So
that's cool.
That's what did. So, but today, you're well known for your contributions to the Linux kernel. You're the maintainer of the stable branch. What does that mean? What role do you play as a kernel developer as the maintainer of the stable branch? Is that like I believe for enterprise distros, right?
No, it's for the machines, the kernels you run.
Okay, so this is the stable branch is anything that's considered stable today. Good. I'm glad we cleared that up. So what does that job involve as the maintainer of the stable branch?
So Linus does a release of the main tree every 2 to 3 months, right? We make a release. I take that release and then do a new release about once a week with all the bug fixes that happen to have showed up in Linus's tree for the past week.
Okay.
That's so that like he does 3.18, and I'll do 3.18.1, .2, .3, .4, and all the patches that go in there are patches that are in Linus's tree. We never want to diverge. And then the distros take those releases and put them in their kernels. They base it on their distro. They base their distro on those kernels. So like Fedora, Arch, Gentoo, SUSE, Ubuntu, they all base their kernels on those stable.
One thing I've noticed, Greg, when I went back over a lot of your presentations before our chat today, and one of the things I've noticed that you often do is you'll start your presentation with a slide that gives a snapshot of the scope of daily activity in the Linux kernel. And when you present it, you're always kind of blown away by the numbers. And I've gone back as far as 2006, and in every presentation, you're like, can you believe these numbers? These are daily numbers. And every time you give the presentation now for years, the numbers are always astronomically larger. And so could you, I don't know if you have rough ideas, but could you give our audience some idea of the scale of development for the Linux kernel?
Yeah, back in 2006 when I started that talk, we were running at like 2 changes an hour, 24 hours a day. And everybody was like, that's just crazy, an impossible rate of change. We'll never be able to keep up with that. I think the 2 kernel releases ago, we did 9 changes an hour. Oh, there's my presentation right there. Yeah, we're averaging about 7.5, I think, to 8. I don't remember the numbers right now. Changes an hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and again, the Linux Foundation tells me to stop saying the word scary in these presentations.
I noticed you do use the word scary a few times, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the traditional computer science model of never change anything that's actually working, it turns out that's wrong because the world changes, so you need to change along with the world. If your operating system doesn't change, it's dead. It's that simple. Well, so we have to change to keep up with that.
I mean, you sort of say it in all of your talks, but it is fundamentally true. It seems like the development around the Linux kernel seems to break all of the rules. People look at it from the outside, and I think they consider it to be kind of chaotic almost in a way. But it's actually very structured in terms of the order of development structure and who's responsible for what. And I think you called it one time a chain of blame even. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so every patch that goes into the kernel has your name on it, of who wrote it, and that's the change that's made. And then that's reviewed by somebody like a maintainer of that subsystem or that driver, and then they put their name on it, say signed off by. And then they send it off to the subsystem owner of that, so like USB, and I'll review that and put my name on it. And then it goes into Linus's tree. Well, that's a nice little legal sign-off by saying who did what to this file. But there's also a nice path of blame, because if it turns out that patch was wrong, all those 3 people have their name on it. They said it was right. They're on the hook to fix it. Mm-hmm. So it's a very personal ownership. You own the file. You own the change. Very much so, with your name on it. We don't care about what company you work for or anything like that, but it's your name on that change. So
right.
It's very ownership.
It's almost it's funny because it's even though it's so huge. Like I'm looking at your presentation. And the number of people that are involved, 8,700 lines added every day. It seems like what you're doing is the exact opposite of what happens in a bureaucracy, where essentially everybody's deferring blame. But in the kernel development, there's a very structured system there to prevent that, which keeps people accountable. But I look at these numbers, 3,000 developers, 3,483. At a certain point, how does it just not fall apart? How does it continue to scale?
We're really actually autonomous. Every subsystem is pretty much independent in a way. I mean, like USB is independent from networking, is independent from sound, is independent for other bits and pieces. We all do connect through well-defined interfaces, but we all work on our own little worlds, and then we merge together. And then the really nice thing is, I mean, every single day, all the subsystem trees are pulled together and built. And all the merged together. Linux Next happens. Stephen Rothwell in Australia pulls it all together every single day.
He's been doing that for years, right?
Yeah, he's been doing it for years, and it tells us exactly what is going wrong. So, like, if I have changes that broke the networking subsystem merge, then I know that, and then I can fix it up. And before it gets to Linus, we know that. We also have something really, really amazing called the Zero-Day Bot. A guy in China working for Intel. I push a change out to my kernel trees. I swear in 15 minutes, he'll say, this single patch at this location was wrong. Please fix it.
Wow.
It's scary how fast and how well it works. I talked to him at the last kernel summit, and he said, yeah, we're scaling really well. We can handle 3,000 more kernel trees. I'm like, what?
Whoa.
Well, so I wonder, though.
So every single patch of every single person that's submitted to the kernel tree, to a subsystem tree, has been tested. Yeah. It's been build tested. It's been build tested with random configurations. It runs performance tests are run on it. A bunch of regression tests are run on it. So this stuff is tested really well before it ever hits Linus.
I wonder, though, so where I'm going with this is the other thing that sometimes the kernel team gets a reputation for is flare-ups when something goes wrong. Is it a combination of the crazy scale of development, the pace of development, and the fact that there is a chain of accountability that these flare-ups happen? What do you suppose where does that rep come from, and is it justified?
The rep comes from the fact that random reporters read development mailing lists.
Yeah. And they pick things up. Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Yeah, and okay, so I harken this back to the fact that do you put a live microphone on a professional baseball manager's jersey during a game?
Right. No, of course not. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Of course not. Right.
Right.
Because he's cussing out the first baseman for making a stupid play. Right.
Right.
The first baseman's a professional. He knows he should have done something right. Yeah, you got cussed out. Okay, great.
Yeah.
You move on and work.
Right. Exactly.
If you look at people publicly arguing with each other, we all know each other. We've known each other for 10, 15 years. We've drank beer with each other. If somebody says to me, "Hey, you did something stupid," I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. I did something stupid. Okay, I'll fix that up." We're professionals. We know this. And has anybody ever read internal mailing lists for engineering development groups at companies?
Right.
I've been in meetings at some very major companies where people cry.
So have I.
Yeah. It's brutal internally. Yeah.
So, but the fact is we're doing everything in public.
Yeah.
So people pounce on things that we say publicly because they don't know the context of what they're doing.
Do you ever wish you could do it not in public? Do you ever wish you could do it behind, at least have the conversations and discussions not in public? Not necessarily the development, of course, but the conversations?
I don't know. Why would we take one thing private that isn't?
Right. Do you think, though,
we do all our development in public, but if you look, so our rate on just the Linux kernel mailing list is about 500 to 600 emails a day. Whoa. Right?
Yeah.
So nobody reads it all. We all filter it. But if you look at, we have a flare up twice a year. So what's that percentage of how many emails to arguments to actually construct?
That's an amazing ratio. That's an amazing ratio, really. Better than my ratio.
How well we actually are working. Any group has arguments.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that we do argue is constructive criticism. We are arguing and we can stand up for a point of view and change people's minds. The really, really good thing about the core kernel developers is you can change our mind.
Yeah.
If you think that what you were doing is right and Linus is wrong or I am wrong or David Miller is wrong, we change.
Sure.
We're open to suggestions.
Well, and in an interesting way, too, it sort of publicly sends the message we hold people accountable, which is actually a good thing to know about the core development of Linux, too. So there's... I just wanted to get your take on it because I think it's a common conception, and I don't know if I agree with it either.
But it's also, I point out strongly that no people joining our community for the first time has ever treated this manner. That's not the way it happens.
Right.
Well, that's cool.
These are friends arguing with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, we all know each other.
It's not like you're a newbie coming into it being screamed at. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, long time relationships.
Yeah.
No, these are long time relationships of people that do that. Again, back to the baseball metaphor, because professional managers yell at other players, it doesn't detract anything from the little leaguers joining, right?
Right. Right. Exactly.
No, and I think you look at the level of contributions to the kernel. I noticed, too, that it used to be a fairly hard sell. Potentially, let's just take, and I don't really want to pick on them, but let's just take Google. I think back in 2006 when you talked to Google, in terms of companies contributing to Linux kernel, they are like spot number 13. If you took out one of their top contributors, they went way, way down the list. And you basically went there and said, look, here's the reason why Google needs to care about the Linux kernel. This is an important technology platform that you've hitched yourself to, but you don't have a say in its direction right now. But these companies do have a say. And it was kind of a hard sell in a sense, but I look at it where we're at now with these numbers in 2014, and I think, do you still feel that is as true today, that we have to go out there and get these companies to get involved, or have they just kind of figured it out now? If they need to be competitive, they've got to work upstream.
Oh, I wish they had figured it out already. I've been giving that same talk since 2006.
Yeah.
My wife jokes, how doesn't everybody know this already? But my response is it's always kindergarten somewhere, right?
I like that.
Well, it's a great talk, too.
It's a fun talk. I've been able to give the same talk, just update the numbers and give it for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's true. I gave this talk to a very huge, well-known Seattle-based company a few months ago because they're not on this list. They rely everything upon Linux, and yet their corporate culture insists that they're not allowed to contribute. So they don't know. It costs you money to not contribute. Intel and IBM have publicly said it is cheaper and faster and better to contribute upstream and do your development that way. And that's why Google changed. Google realized that, and they fixed that. Mm-hmm. And Google now is a huge contributor because it takes time and money to try and keep a fork and to try and keep your development effort separate. Intel is so far ahead of everybody. They know exactly what they're doing. We've had to remove code from the kernel for chips that they never shipped.
They were that far ahead in the development process that they start that soon contributing to the kernel.
Yes, and same thing with IBM. IBM had code for a new processor that was accepted into the kernel tree before it taped out. I mean, they're that far ahead. IBM and Intel is that far ahead of what's going on. They know what they're doing.
And as a result, you see it benefit Intel not just obviously in the areas that they're interested in, but now as end users, when I install Fedora 21, I get Wayland out of the box on my Intel machines, and it's just sort of already there and ready to go. It's a really great experience. So I guess that means the sale does continue on. How do you feel about Android? It seems like, from what I've read, you're pretty ambivalent towards it. You don't consider it to necessarily be a bad thing. Do you think Linux gets enough credit in the picture of Android, or do you even care?
I don't care, in a way, because I'm happy they're using Linux kernel.
Yeah.
I mean, what they did was actually a really cool thing. They used the kernel on entirely new user space libraries in such a way you can drop a distro on top of it, and it doesn't conflict. So that's a really cool engineering effort.
Yeah.
The Android kernel code has been merged for years. I mean, you can run Android on a stock kernel just fine.
Right.
There's no problem there. That's been going on well. I've actually merged some of the binder code out of the staging tree into the main part of the Linux kernel for the next kernel release. And because people rely on it. It's horrible, crazy code. Should never be used outside of an Android system, but people rely on it. And the whole argument of all the Android stuff, I mean, we're talking 7,000 lines of code. I joke that's 1/3 the size of your serial port driver.
That really puts it in perspective, doesn't it? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Android code that was merged outside. Everybody, when you ship a product, has bits and pieces that aren't merged upstream. That's just the way things go based on timelines and everything else. And so it was just a tiny bit there. So it works well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's the new year, Greg, and I'd love to look ahead and just in your opinion, looking in your specific crystal ball, when we get towards the end of 2015, early 2016, do you see things going maybe a little more towards the direction of rolling? I noticed in one of your talks, you're the maintainer of the stable branch, and you said you don't necessarily think some companies in development should use stable. You think they need to stay very current, maybe stay a little more rolling. Do you see the world of Linux going that direction?
Well, stable, if you notice, I do a release once a week, right?
Yeah.
And then I do stable releases for every release that Linus uses. So those are good, solid kernels that people use and rely on. The old enterprise model of sticking with one kernel for 3 years and heavily backporting patches and what to it,
right.
I think that model, the RHEL model, the SLES model, I mean, I supported and did that work for years at SUSE. I think that model's wrong. I don't think that's the right way to go forward. I think you need to be working with the upstream kernel. And if you even look, SUSE and Oracle have adopted that model. For their enterprise update kernels, they update to the latest version and move forward, better than backporting stuff. Oracle's come out and said, hey, you guys are really doing a good job. You are not breaking things. The kernel community made the rule that we're not going to have regressions, we're going to fix problems, and things are going to continue to work that previously worked, and we're not going to break user space APIs. And we've been doing that for the past 10 years, and people realize that now. So I think that model is the proper model forward. If you look at people like CoreOS are doing that, Project Atomic from Red Hat, they're doing that, and lots of hosting providers are doing that as well. You can provide the latest Arch, the latest Ubuntu kernel based for your cloud provider.
You're an advisor to the CoreOS project, correct?
Yeah, those guys are friends of mine. I've known them for years.
What is it about CoreOS that excites you?
It's a rolling release that provides a way to keep the internet secure in a way. That's their goal. So they want the base operating system underneath to be constantly updated and kept up to date with all the security features and all the security updates and all the latest new features. And then you run containers with your application on top of that. And then you do so in a distributed model based on the model that lots of big cloud computing companies have been using. You have tools that can help manage your huge number of containers that are running, because it's the old pet versus cattle model. You guys have heard of that analogy, right? You don't have your cloud computing, your instances are cattle. You can kill one and it goes off and you can get another one. You don't own them and you don't name them and protect them. And
you don't get sentimental with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what, and it's actually switching. Computing is getting more of, you're not thinking of the individual box anymore. You're thinking of the individual. I need this service running, so if I have 10 instances of this service running, I'm okay, and I don't care where those 10 instances are running, but I just need to keep all 10 running in some location in some manner. So you don't need to necessarily manage what is this box being kept up to date, or is this box running? You need to know my service provider levels are running. And CoreOS guys are building the tools to help that.
Yeah, it is really exciting.
Other people are doing that as well, and it's based on Chrome OS from Google, so it's based on some really cool update tools that are happening there.
Yeah.
So, which is actually based on Gentoo, which I've been a developer for about a decade or so.
Right. Wow. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? In fact, that's something I think that people don't really know much about. I don't know why. I guess maybe because they thought you were a SUSE guy. But what do you do for the Gentoo project?
I maintain a few packages and update the kernel every once in a while. I don't do too much. I make sure my commit bit is still there. Yeah. So I have a few small packages. I run it on some of my servers.
Your daily driver is
actually used by a lot of companies and a lot of big places. I mean, NASDAQ runs is based. The world financial system is run on Gentoo.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a sales pitch right
there. That shows you where rolling can work. But your daily driver is Arch today. Is that still true?
Yes, it is. So on my workstation on my laptop, I run Arch.
Oh, interesting. How do you like Arch, and why Arch?
I like it a lot. It's a nice, consistently updated to the latest upstream packages. They're not diverging from what upstream feels like. It works really well. And at the time, I needed some packages that OpenSUSE didn't have updates. That was a little hard to fit into because I used to maintain Tumbleweed for OpenSUSE, which was a rolling version of OpenSUSE. And so I switched to Arch, and I haven't looked back.
Very really nice. Yeah, I enjoy it quite a bit too, and it feels like just the right amount of distro for me. Like not too much distro, but just enough to help me along.
And you're not having to rebuild LibreOffice every week.
Oh wow. Okay, so I have
Gentoo. If you run Gentoo on a desktop, you're rebuilding LibreOffice every week.
Yeah, I was a Gentoo user, and I went kind of stepped away because of the time. But I still love it. It's a great project. I actually ran it on a lot of servers for a long time. As crazy as that sounds, but for what we needed, it was a printing thing. We needed Gentoo. Okay.
No, actually, Gentoo is really good in customization. I mean, the majority of your TVs used to run Gentoo until Android came out.
Whoa.
Really?
Whoa.
Yeah, wow. I mean, all the TVs in the world were running based on Gentoo because Gentoo made a way to set, I want these specific packages. It can build them in a way, in a binary blob, and push them off. So a lot of embedded systems use Gentoo. I mean, Gentoo, again, like NASDAQ, and there's a number of other huge financial companies that use Gentoo. Again, Chrome OS, a lot of people base their Linux systems on Gentoo.
Okay, so I've got to ask you, because Gentoo kind of made me think of this. You have some involvement with the systemd project. What are your thoughts on systemd and the things around that? A good project, like the direction? You were the creator of UDEV, correct?
Yes.
So, and systemd sort of started to replace UDEV, if I recall my history correctly. So what are your thoughts on it?
Well, we merged the UDEV code into the systemd repository. So it's still there.
It lives on.
It's good. But it isn't being replaced by any means. A lot of the shared libraries we were using was in both. We had them in two different projects, so we merged them together.
Sounds ideal.
Yeah. So actually, I mean, Leonard and Kai have been my really good friends for a very long time. I agree with the direction they're going. I have lots of changes into the systemd project. I've been participating in the Hackfest for years. I've been working on the KDBus work that Daniel Mack and other David Herman are working on in order to make some dbus work for systemd work even better.
Yeah.
So I strongly agree with their direction forward. I like what they're doing, and I'm a developer of it. So yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so at a recent talk, and I think it was actually maybe end of 2013, so not so recent. It's a little bit of a downer, but you said, in your opinion, the only thing that could ever hurt Linux would be Linux itself. You said that you're always watching to see if we're slipping because really the biggest threat to Linux is Linux itself. Could you expand on that a little bit? That was kind of striking when you said it.
Well, I mean, if you look at our rate of change, what do we have? Of over 3,000 developers last year, right? Now, 1/3 of those developers only contributed one patch. I think half contributed to, so it's an exponential curve, right? But our rate of change cannot be met by anybody else. I mean, all the other companies that do operating systems agree. You guys are contributing the fastest, you're innovating the fastest. We can't keep up. So, and we're creating new things now. We haven't been playing catch up for a long, long time. All these new things we're making, like systemd, KDBus, new system calls and whatnot. These are all things that we have to create new because we've already surpassed and finished the Unix compatibility a long time ago. So the only thing that can really stop us and stop Linux from succeeding is if we mess up somehow. I don't see anything new. Maybe something new comes along and everybody else decides to switch to that.
How would you gauge? Yeah, I mean, you seem very vigilant about it, but what would be an indicator to you? How would you know?
So that's why I started keeping track of these numbers back in 2006. See, nobody knew how many people were contributing or what our rate of change was and whatnot. So I was curious. So I started keeping track of these numbers. And then every year I say, there's no way these numbers can get any bigger. There's no way we can get faster.
Right.
And I'm very, very good at giving wrong predictions.
Well, I wouldn't have thought you'd be wrong. Every time I watch the presentation, I'm like, okay, that's going to be it. That's it.
Yeah.
9.5 changes per hour.
9.5 changes an hour.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's unbelievable.
If you look, the 3.19 kernel, we just did more changes in the merge window than we ever have.
Amazing.
So, before for a kernel. So we keep increasing our rate of change. So we get together and talk every year at the Kernel Summit. Is our process working? Is what we're doing correct? Are we having problems? Where are our major issues right now? And we work on them. So my goal is to make sure that we constantly reevaluate ourselves, change, and we've been tweaking things. For the past 10 years, we've changed our development model radically. We now have gone to a rolling release, stable releases, development releases. We've changed our model, and we do that based on what we have and our problems. So sure, we have problems in our development model. We have some resource constraints at certain spots, but we're doing well. I mean, if you just look at the raw numbers, our numbers are huge.
It's amazing, really. It blows me away.
We can cut our number of developers and rate of change in half, and we're still doing better than anybody else by orders of magnitude.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Crazy.
So, what is it about Linux today that gets you excited? You still seem to have a lot of passion for it. Is what I saw? I've seen you answer this question a few times in the past. It's been KVM. I've heard embedded devices before. What is it today about Linux that kind of gets you excited?
The fact that anybody can use it for anything. I mean, I like creating Linux, make it a tool for other people to fulfill their goals. I mean, you look at the places Linux shows up are crazy. If you look, all the street lights, all the traffic signals, those are all being replaced with Linux devices these days.
It's truly becoming a general platform
for a single kernel, which is scary.
That's amazing.
So lots of major countries are switching their infrastructure right now. They have budget issues. Every 10 years, they replace all their infrastructure, and they're switching everything to Linux. Train systems are running on Linux. All air traffic control in Europe is Linux. Power, about 5 years ago, 80% of the power generated in the U.S. was based on steam turbines running Linux.
That's amazing. It is. It's incredible to see it grow. I have to imagine, from your perspective, over the years, it must be rewarding.
Yeah, it's fun working on things that other people use, and then it's scary realizing that people are using the same stuff.
A little scary too. I can see that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. But it's fun creating something that allows other people to build upon. And I like doing that. I like making tools that other people can use.
Well, Greg, if you happen to make it up to Linux Fest Northwest at the end of April up in Bellingham, beer is on Jupiter Broadcasting for sure. We'll take good care if you make it up there. It's a great event, and it's at the end of April.
I was supposed to speak there a couple years ago. Something fell through, and now the past 2 years there's been a scheduling conflict with a different conference I have to go to.
Yeah, it is tight. It starts to get busy around it. Well, if you make it up, we'll have a booth, and be sure to stop by and say hi.
Okay, I'll be glad to.
Thanks so much for coming on the Linux Action Show. Have a great rest of your Sunday.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me.
And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. But Matt, before we get out of here, we've got some follow-up and feedback to follow up on feedback on.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense, right?
Absolutely wouldn't question it.
Actually, looking ahead to next week, it's the big show in Las Vegas. That's right. CES International is kicking off January 6th or the 9th. And you can follow daily coverage on Tech Talk today on Jupiter Broadcasting live at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, jblive.tv, and of course, released on demand a few hours after that. So anything cool coming out at CES will be featured in Tech Talk today, and I'll be taking a particular look at Linux-powered devices and giving them a shout-out. And one of the things I have found in covering CES now for a couple of years is it's much easier to jump into the CES stream and then follow it as stuff develops. That way things don't drop through the cracks, and that's what Tech Talk today is perfect for. It's a daily tech show from a Linux user's perspective. And we'll be covering CES next week. Tune in and join us. We have an open mumble room. Nice. And you're always invited to do commentary. We just do a little mic check first. Matt.
Yeah?
Something came up this week that I wanted to talk in this show about, but we just didn't have time, so I'm going to tease it. I'm going to play a clip from Richard Stallman. He's at an event going on right now, the Chaos Computer Club big conference. It's really awesome. They invited Richard Stallman to speak. I want to play the introduction to his speech, and then we'll probably talk about it more in this week's Linux Unplugged. So I'm going to get this started. We'll listen to this for a little bit, and then we'll finish it up and get clips for Unplugged. There we go.
So I'm going to start with requests for you. First, if you take a photo of me, please do not put it in Facebook or Instagram. That company is a monstrous surveillance engine. Second, please do not take a photo of me with an eye thing if it is putting in geolocations or if it might be uploading photos automatically. Please keep the light on the audience. Do not dim the lights, please. I don't want to fall asleep. That's not what I'm here for. Wow. If some of you want to sleep with me, maybe we could arrange it tonight, but not here in this auditorium.
Laptop has gone to standby.
Oh. So, second, if you make a recording audio or video and you want to distribute copies, please distribute them only in the formats that are favorable to free software, which are the OGG formats or the WebM format. Please do not distribute copies in MP anything. Especially don't let them be distributed in Flash, which requires non-free software. So YouTube is not a good place. And don't distribute them with Windows Media Player, Real Player, or QuickTime. Please don't ever distribute anything through iTunes, which requires non-free software to download. Apple has intentionally broken free software that used to work to download from iTunes. So down with iTunes and down with Apple. And please make sure that the site doesn't lead people to run non-free software as they try to access it, which YouTube does. Unfortunately, the HTML5 option of YouTube requires running non-free JavaScript code. Now, you can get things from YouTube without non-free software if you use YouTube DL, but that's not what the site leads people to do.
I love it. I mean, he's fired up.
Wow. You know, I just don't feel like I don't feel like he's assertive enough. I feel like that he's really holding back.
That's the introduction to his talk. I have a feeling it's going to be great. He says, for your freedom in your own computer, the software must be free. For freedom on the internet, we must organize against surveillance, censorship, software as a service, and the war against sharing.
And for those interested, it doesn't look like we're watching a YouTube video.
No.
So we are compliant.
I invite all of you to watch all of Richard's talk. It is linked in the feedback section of our show notes. And then please join us for Linux Unplugged on Tuesday so we can talk about it. I'll have some clips from his talk, and we can discuss some of his points. Because in the description here, I have to say, I'm on board 100% with everything in the description of this video. And every point he just made there, to me, actually sounds true, and it makes sense. So I have a feeling that even though Richard is presenting it in a very extreme way, what he has to say in this talk is actually probably very good to listen to. So I invite you to listen to it. It sounds like it's provocative, and we'll have commentary on Tuesday. Hey, Matt, I noticed you had a great article up over at Datamation.
I plugged it once. I'm going to plug it again.
Do it, Matt. It's a good
why
one.
you should switch to Ubuntu Mate Edition.
I think this is a good one.
This is based on my experiences. It really spoke to me, and I'm very, very happy with it. So I encourage you to check it out.
These are my favorite ones. Is where you do something, like you make a big change, and then you're able to write up about it. Like those are always the best articles.
Totally.
And of course you can catch both Matt and I on episode 74 of Linux Unplugged on Tuesday. Linux Action Show is live. This show right here, 10 a.m. Pacific. You can go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar to get that converted to your local time zone. Hang out with us in the chat room. We do stuff in between segments. We got pre-show, post-show, all that shenanigans, and you get to help pick our title. If you can't be here live, and I understand, time is a hard thing for us hairless monkeys, so I do not judge. jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. Send your feedback in, or even better, engage with the community and make our show better over at linuxactionshow.reddit.com. Boom. We've also got some really big things in works for this show and other shows around Linux that we'll be telling you more about in the future. Go to patreon.com/today. You can fund all of the Jupiter Broadcasting shows, and we're doubling down on our investment in our Linux productions right now. It's the first half of 2015, and we really love your support. We'll tell you more about it soon, but you can get involved over at patreon.com/today to support this show and all of the shows and some of the investments we're making very soon.
Good stuff.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week. All right, time for the feedback. And since now we record the feedback. Now we record the feedback.
You're actually rocking that accent pretty good.
Thank you.
I approve. It's good.
Yes. All right, Matt. Here we go. It's the Linux Action Show feedback segment, the end of the show, and it begins in 3. In 2.
Feel the vibration.
And that brings us to the end of this week's broadcast. But Matt, man, I did something dumb last night.
Uh-oh.
So, you ever have that moment where, like, you just want to be real lazy, but then your wife does something that's, like, super motivated, and you're like, well, I cannot sit here and eat M&Ms while she's on the treadmill. And I'm like, I need to walk too. I thought maybe I'd sleep better, which I think maybe I did because of it.
You can't, yeah.
So I was like, all right, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go for a mile and a half walk on the treadmill. But I don't want to be sweaty. I don't want to be uncomfortable. It's late at night. I'm going to go to bed soon. Not too soon, but a couple hours. I don't want. So what do? I go on the treadmill without shoes on.
Ooh.
And I thought, I've done this before. That's not so bad.
It's not so bad until about 10 minutes into it.
Oh, Matt, I've got welts on my toes. I've got welts on the bottom of my foot. I've got welts on my heels. I've got welts on my welts.
Yeah, see, that's like me if I wear sandals doing something like that. Same thing. Yeah, we have a little sit and bike,
Literally hurts to walk. Yeah, I've been to both. I went to Ohio Linux, met Chris last. It was tongue-tied a bit, but it was considerably smaller than I was assuming. I was too. I thought it was smaller, but smaller actually isn't necessarily bad.
Right.
Too big is definitely a thing. I think Linux Fest Northwest is reaching a threshold where it's really big for my preferences.
I think so.
If you go to a BSD event, it's like a few hundred people.
Really?
Right. Yeah. So Ohio Fest, I think Ohio was like maybe 800 to 1,000. I don't know.
Well, I used to get dragged to the Gnome Decks in Seattle every year, and it was like a mosh pit. There's so many people there, and you barely, if you see anyone it's like a miracle. It's just a whole different thing. So Linux Fest is a real treat for me.
The one the crew tells me is the best one I didn't make it to last year is Southeast Linux Fest.
That could be cool.
Scale is coming up.
I could see Southeast Linux Fest being a lot of fun, just based on location, culture.
Yeah, and the organizers are great. Yeah. They've really been putting on a good show for a long time. And they go to Ohio, so we met them at Ohio.
Nice.
So
nice.
February 19th, 22nd is the next big one at Scale, and we'll have some of the crew down there. Cool. I won't be making it, but a lot of the crew will be making it. And
nice.
So that's the first. That's like one of the biggest. And then after that, I don't know actually if it's bigger than Linux Fest, but after that is it probably is,
it's competitive. It depends because Linux Fest is getting bigger and bigger.
My impression is that exactly. My impression is it's quite large, but I don't know if that's in comparison to Linux Fest or not. But my impression is it's the largest usually, and then Linux Fest Northwest, and then South, and then Ohio.
I found that Linux conventions as a whole are just more personable than you would find at other types of technology conventions. Other types of technology conventions, you go, you sit down, you get talked at. And then you go somewhere else to get talked at. Usually it's, little pod people. And it's not fun. Linux Fests are fun in general. I mean, they're just, it's a good time.